Hey everyone, this is People of Substance by LemonSkies. I'm excited to welcome my guest today, Katy Jordan. Katy has a lot of years of experience in digital marketing and fundraising and all things nonprofit. And she's a coach and consultant and serves on DMAW Board. So I'm excited to welcome you, Katy.
Hey, thanks, Olga. Glad to be here and excited to serve with you on the board in 2025. So congrats on your
Yes.
election.
Yes, I'll try to keep up. So let me just kind of easy lowball question. How did you end up in nonprofit sector? And that's a question I'd love to ask to see who intended to do that versus, those of us who were political science or anthropology majors that kind of strayed away.
Sure. I'll say it was an intentional choice to get into nonprofit, but maybe not the marketing and fundraising world I've found myself in the past several years. But I've always been a musician. I started playing piano when I was 6 years old and played viola, which I picked up later and played through high school. And I always intended to minor in music in college. I actually started off as a chemical engineer for 2.5 years and then decided to rethink my life choices. But I never really thought what you could do with a music degree besides teach or perform. And those weren't very appealing to me at that point. And so I did an internship one summer at the Baltimore Symphony, as well as a local theater company. And my eyes were opened to, oh, they need to sell tickets to these things and raise money for these places. And so that the world of arts administration and arts management kind of came into focus. And I ended up changing and focused and majored in music composition. And shortly after college, found a job at the Baltimore Opera Company while they were in the process of going bankrupt. And so that led me to pursue an MBA at University of Baltimore because finding business-minded people to run some of these organizations I found to be something helpful. And after, unfortunately, the opera went out of business, we all lost our jobs. I shortly thereafter found myself at a marketing agency in the direct marketing field.
Yeah. So I had no idea about your musical background. That's so interesting. And fun fact for you, I'm actually, I'm not going to say a big fan of opera, but I do enjoy it quite a lot.
Yes.
So that's good to know.
The original multimedia arts experience. It has everything.
There's a lot of drama, that's for sure. It's not subtle. So one of the questions, and actually it's a little bit, I don't want to say self-serving, but it's come up a number of times. And I wanted to see what you think. Organizations that are starting out. So a lot of times you have these organizations that are springing up, and it's a little bit of a catch-22, right? So to deliver on mission, you need money. To get money, you need some proven track record of mission delivery. And, there's a lot of really passionate individuals that you encounter. And the question they'll ask is sort of, well, how do I get this off the ground? And I struggle with that one because, if you're brand new to the field, grants are probably not available to you without track record. So how would somebody like that get their work off the ground?
Yeah. So do I start a nonprofit, and what is that experience like? I think, I don't even know the millions of nonprofits that exist. There's likely already something established for a cause that you're passionate about. And I think being really thoughtful about what it's going to take, not just from your passion and, reaching those related to your mission, but what's it going to take from a resource and business perspective. So I think this applies to any sort of business. Like, why am I doing it? What is the purpose? And if it's really to, achieve those sort of mission goals, does it make more sense to chart your own course from scratch? Or is there some alignment or some other organizations doing something that you could amplify or partner with? Because having started a nonprofit as well as my own business, it's it's not easy. And as you know too, Olga, it is draining. So never losing sight of like why you're doing this in the first place. And that being intentional about every aspect of your business to align with that. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, no, I love that. I happen to agree that I think there's a lot of times that you can actually have a greater impact by partnering up with other organizations. But
Yeah.
I've definitely seen this come up time and time again. And it's sort of like, well, I don't really know, like, how much do you want to invest in starting something, right? So how much do you want to fund yourself? But it's definitely a challenging one that keeps coming up.
Yeah. And I think what do they say, you know, friends, family, and fools for any business new venture, where you start. And if it's really mission oriented, who in your network is passionate about, and if it's seed money or support, having those sort of angel donors or supporters is going to be a faster path to cash likely than grants or a mass market fundraising strategy, especially in the early years.
Yeah, because mass market, you don't just turn on the tap. It's expensive.
For sure.
So let's talk about, you mentioned a lot of time in direct response, and you have a lot of agency background and digital in particular, which sort of, used to be an add-on, but now it's sort of,
yes,
you don't know how you run an organization without having digital. So we're on the heels of Giving Tuesday. What are some new things you're seeing in digital marketing in particular relating to nonprofits?
Sure. Yeah, I think having helped build and scale digital teams within agencies that have been established and founded on direct mail and print, for the early part of that experience, it was invest in digital, the donors will come. I promise they will come, they will come. Well, especially over the pandemic, for most causes, the donors came in droves. So the shift has really been not necessarily the investment to attract those younger donors, but how do we right size our investments to maintain and continue to grow these very generous donors that all of a sudden decided to adopt digital and give online. So I think that's made it a bit easier for digital marketers because people get it and understand, look, it's 2024. How do you run a business without having any digital? So I think that's one thing. The other challenge and opportunity, I think, is just the constant proliferation and expansion of the various digital media channels, the expertise needed in each of those. 15 years ago, you could get a generalist that knew enough about what digital advertising was at the time. Now you need a team with expertise in search and social and programmatic and. So thinking really thoughtfully about, what that channel mix is, who are the right people to have on your team or within partnerships, and what's sort of tried and true versus exploratory or kind of experimental. What I think we've seen a lot too in the influencer space, but it's not really about one channel. It's just how the basics of marketing, where your audience is, how you reach them, and what you're trying to get them to do, whether that's give, support, volunteer, or buy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like, to your point, it's becoming much more specialized.
Yeah.
Different areas.
I joke like the age of the generalist is no longer.
Yeah, for better or worse. And it's interesting because I think some of the channels that are part of a digital mix for corporate, I think nonprofits are still having a little bit of questions about, or a little bit of a pause. Influencers in particular, that's an interesting one to unpack.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the accuracy and understanding from what's driving the revenue or the response, and the platforms and the technology they're using is changing so rapidly as well. If you compare how search works today versus last quarter versus last year, it's wildly different. So a lot of these budget plannings and, looking forward are based on not apples to apples comparison, but especially from the fundraising perspective, we crave as marketers the same level of control and certainty we've had for decades in direct mail, down to the audience sub panel and test. You know what you can control, and we can't control what happens online, and the anonymity there is much more difficult to solve for as well.
So when people talk about digital transformation, like, does it have a singular definition? What does it mean?
I think that can mean a lot of things and different things to everyone. Where you are on your journey to adopting digital, are you incorporating that in all aspects of your business? I think, seeing of evolution in the healthcare space with telehealth and, virtual services and leveraging AI, let alone how you're reaching and marketing to your donors and supporters. So what that might mean for a health or hospital system might be very different than how a local animal shelter is leveraging Pet Finder to get more awareness out about all of their puppies and kitties that need homes. And depending if you have a staff of 3 or 300, everyone's at different levels of how they're individually using digital, but also what role all the aspects of digital play in delivering on that mission. So definitely a lot of things.
Well, and I appreciate you bringing up mission delivery, because I think in our space, so many of us are concerned with communications and marketing and fundraising, but the very mission delivery, I mean, that has to be a part of the equation.
Right? Why do we exist?
Right. Raison d'etre. Well, let me ask you this to kind of pivot
Sure.
to use conversation a little bit. I know you've kind of started coaching, and I was curious about that, kind of what led you down that pathway. And as you're coaching others, has it influenced you yourself?
Oh, yeah. Great questions. Well, first of all, my first experience with coaching was probably about 10 years ago, and I was leading a team, and my boss at the time suggested I work with a coach. I was a younger member of the executive team. I was working on my executive presence and how to, influence and things like that. So that was my first experience in receiving it. But that experience also, at the time, I was building and growing these startups basically within these more established businesses. And my team got sick of me saying, well, what makes sense today is not going to make sense tomorrow. Everything from who we want to be and what services we want to provide versus what talent we need. And that really unlocked my passion for leadership development, mentorship, and seeing the success of these up and comers there within our own organization and beyond. And then I began my coaching training with the idea of working with individuals about 2.5 years ago. And through that, I've hired and been working with my own coach. And to the second part of your question, I'm a believer because I've seen it happen for me. And when you go through coach training, the very immersive, intense training courses, they're demonstrating, they're providing coaching, you're practicing, and you're receiving a lot of it. And that just solidifies like the power that can be. Then I got turned on to the organizational coaching. And for me, that was like this is what I've been doing: change management, culture change, scaling. And all of that involves humans working together for better or for worse. So how can systems and organizational coaching and things that I've learned support humans and businesses, and the humans within and surrounding those businesses do their best work and work better together, again, to achieve those mission outcomes. So that is basically what led me to make this leap, a big leap of faith I took just about a year ago. And I'm a believer, and I've been really fortunate to work with some really trusting and amazing clients so far.
Well, and I like that you alluded to the people factor, because, the best strategy, the best
Exactly.
cleanest possible data you have, and the best, anything is only as good as people that are driving strategy. So we'll talk. My definition of a coach usually is, the football coach. So we'll talk about that separately offline. So.
Oh yeah. Well, I've also been coaching my son's baseball and soccer teams. So there's a whole different aspect of Coach Katy as well.
We'll need some photos with hope you have a whistle and everything. So.
So wrangling at the young elementary school age.
I'm sure. Well, you mentioned music. So obviously performing arts and cultural institutions, which I actually did not know about you coming in here. What are some other causes that you are personally involved in? And if you find time between coaching and working and everything else you're doing?
Sure. Getting more involved in the arts community for sure. Several years back, I co-founded a nonprofit arts collective in Baltimore to really help up and coming artists have space to perform and showcase their artwork. So that's definitely a passion area of mine. Board leadership through DMAW, and especially focusing on education and our up and coming leaders in the nonprofit space. Definitely a sucker for any animal cause. I have 4 rescue animals. We have 2 cats and 2 dogs, and there's some local shelters here that I like to support for sure. And more recently, in more of the coaching side, I've been getting involved in some academic communities as well as some workforce development, specifically an organization called Braven that really works with first generation college students and first generation immigrants, as well as people of color, to help them succeed in their educational and career path. And so I've done some work with some pro bono coaching as well as some mock interview stuff, and that's really rewarding. And I've seen from my work experience working with younger generations and up and coming entry level talent, there's so much to be learned from our younger generations and my kids, and going through some of those volunteer opportunities. It's always a learning experience. It's never what I can impart to them, but how can we learn from each other, and never losing sight of that.
You keep busy, that's for sure. So is the venue for the arts performing, is that in Baltimore? Is that still up and running? And
yeah, so it's sort of evolved over time. That was several years back, pre-marriage, pre-kids,
pandemic,
career, all of these things. So we didn't really have a concrete formal space, but we would do some immersive arts performances, and we had sort of an incubator space that we won a grant through Baltimore City, where we, occupied some of these abandoned storefronts downtown and used that as sort of our place. And some of the leadership is still involved. That organization doesn't exist anymore, but has really helped inform and develop an actual concrete space called LemonSkies in downtown Baltimore, where they're still aligned with, some of those same ethos we originally founded.
That's very cool. Yeah. Well, Katy, thank you so much for being a guest on. I just really appreciate it. And I feel like we keep running into each other, and we'll get a chance to spend more time in our service to DMAW and just continued involvement in nonprofits. So I just really appreciate your time today.
Awesome. Thanks, Olga. Thanks for having me. This has been fun.